Until I picked this book up, I don't recall ever having seen a popular history that was devoted solely to the United States Army in the Pacific. I mean, you've got Rick Atkinson's trilogy about the Army in Europe and Ian Toll's trilogy about the Navy in the Pacific in World War II. I thought both those sets of books were great, but I had never seen anything comparable to those books for the Army in the Pacific. Now, John McManus wrote a series that fills that gap. I've started with volume 3, which is pretty much the end of the story. It covers the period from the invasion of Luzon up to and including the Japanese surrender in August 1945. He's also got a discussion of what was going on between the Americans and the Chinese nationalists. The campaigns in Luzon and Okinawa had 3 standout features for me. The first one was the ferocious defense that the Japanese mounted in both these places. We all knew that, but McManus takes us right inside the fanatical mindset of on the Japanese side. He reaches all the way from the Japanese top deck down to the Japanese troops in the field. Looks like the kamikaze spirit wasn't just for pilots, it seems to have consumed just about everybody on the Japanese side. I think for any American, especially this one, this kind of fanaticism is absolutely mind-blowing. Now, against that fanaticism, McManus contrasts the courage and the perseverance of the American soldiers who had to carry out their commander's battle plans. And battle plans that may or may not have been very well conceived. The casualty figures tell you just about everything you need to know about how fierce the fighting was in these places. There was certainly no glamour in these battles, and maybe that's why I haven't seen books devoted to it. Now, to me, the sheer scale of the U.S. Army's operations in these places is the third standout feature of these battles. I don't think that I may be wrong, I don't think American civilians really have any conception of the size of the U.S. military. I certainly didn't until I was in the Army in the late 1960s. And even then, I saw only a very small fraction of the scale and the scope of the U.S. military. McManus sketches it all pretty well. He gives interesting portraits of the commanders on both sides that gives some insight into the way they thought. He manages to present a little bit about their backgrounds that maybe colored their thinking. And like all good modern battle histories, he goes all the way from the commanding generals down to the ground pounders who were ultimately responsible for making it all happen. One thing that surprised me about this book is that it had no treatment whatever of the strategic bombing campaign that the Army Air Corps was carrying out in Japan. In addition, there's really no discussion of the dropping of the nuclear weapons on Japan. He more or less simply jumps from the American success in Okinawa to the decision by the Japanese to finally surrender. That's an overstatement, but it's, I think, more or less correct. The reason all this surprised me was because at that time, air formations were part of the Army. The Air Force that we now know wasn't created as a separate branch until 1947. A couple of general remarks. The book has very good maps, although I wish he had provided more of them so as to give a better understanding of the different phases of these battles. And finally, of course, the book is very, very thoroughly researched. Well, now I've got to go back to the beginning and read the first 2 volumes. In the meantime, if you happen to be a history junkie, you may want to give this book a try. To the End of the Earth, John C. McManus, and I'll see you back next Sunday.